I hate to break it to you, but my girlfriend who's 20 years younger is pregnant. I prefer younger girls, so I'm getting a divorce. Cool with you? Alright, divorce if you want, but take good care of our son. Huh? You should take the boy with you. Haven't you spoiled him enough? No, I can't. Because he is. I closed my mouth right there. If this conversation was to stay between us, there wouldn't be any problem. But this voice, Ken must have heard it from his place in the room. What would he think if he heard this? That was my only concern. Still, I must retort, or else this man will not understand the gravity of the situation. Destroying our happiness and only thinking about his own? That's too selfish. I won't stand for it. Just as our happiness was taken away, I want to take his away too. Driven by such feelings, I decided to confront Ted with a shocking truth. My name is Mila Davis, I am 41 years old. I live with my husband Ted and our high school junior son, Ken. I married Ted 13 years ago when I was 28. Back then, I was an insurance saleswoman. I used to visit various companies and sell insurance. That's when I met Ted. Ted was working at a local import-export business, and he had just divorced his wife. My wife cheated on me and left me. Now I'm living with my 5-year-old son, just the two of us, and it's pretty lonely. He said, looking somewhat sorrowful. Every time I visited Ted's company for work, I started talking to him. Eventually, Ted asked me, would you like to go out together? But we never went out, just the two of us. Because Ted always brought his son Ken along. He can't stay at home alone, right? I'd really love for you to be my son's new mom, but I guess you wouldn't want to marry a man with a child? Seeing him like that, I thought he truly cherishes his child. If he could care for a child like that, then surely he'd care for his family. So, I decided to marry Ted. But that was all a performance to marry me. In fact, as soon as we got married, Ted changed. I quit my job as soon as we got married and became a housewife. Housework and childcare became my job. That wasn't a problem, but Ted started neglecting Ken. Before our marriage, he even brought Ken along on our dates. But after our marriage, he didn't even look at Ken. Not just on weekdays, but even on weekends, Ted never talked to Ken. He never took Ken out somewhere, never played with him, nothing. Even after Ken started elementary school, Ted's attitude didn't change one bit. I went to all the school events alone, and he totally ignored all events that parents should join and enjoy together. You could at least attend some of the school events with Ken. When I said that, Ted made a grimace. After that, he sighed in annoyance and said, sorry, but I'm just tired from work. But... Oh, be quiet. Taking care of our son is your job as his mother, right? Just do it properly. And with that, he shouted and ended the conversation. What happened to the man I knew before we got married? I felt a twinge of regret. Then, one day, Ken had just come home from elementary school and was helping me prepare dinner. Suddenly, a message from Ted arrived on my phone. Wait. What? He's bringing his subordinates home from now? Apparently, he was going to bring several colleagues home. Ted had just been promoted to team leader. So he probably wanted to deepen his relationship with his new subordinates. What should I do? We don't have any food stored. They would surely end up drinking at our home. And if that's the case, we'll need some snacks. It's not even an hour's drive from the office to our home. After some thought, I decided to go to the nearby supermarket to buy some ingredients. When I got home, I started cooking in a hurry. I'll help too. Oh, thank you. Then, could you please get the dishes ready? We prepared as hard as we could, but there were limits. Ted arrived home when only about half of the preparations were done. I'm home! Hey, I brought my colleagues! Ted shouted at the entrance. I greeted them briefly and led them to the room. Then I served them beer and snacks. As I was thinking about preparing the next dish, Ted came into the kitchen and asked me, Hey, what's happening with the food? I'm cooking right now. There are snacks, so it should be okay for now. What have you been doing? I told you in advance. If you could notify me a bit earlier. Stop complaining. You should have this ready. Do you want me to be embarrassed? I was shouted at and was left speechless. Of course, there were countless things I wanted to rebut. But the sound in the kitchen could be heard in the living room. The guests must have felt uncomfortable too. Thinking so, I couldn't say anything in response. In the end, I just silently endured our guests. But once the guests had left, I had a big fight with Ted. I was angry at Ted for shouting at me just because of his own convenience. Then Ted puckered his lips and said in a childish manner, "Okay, fine. I'll have a party in some venues from now on. Happy now?" After that, Ted started to hang out more. His spending got wilder, and he would head out early on his days off. By then, Ken had become a 7th grade student, and it started costing money for things like after-school programs. That's when I talked to Ted about wanting to start a part-time job.
A part-time job? What, you want money for leisure?
No, that's not it. It's for things like Ken's tuition for the after-school programs.
Oh, I see.
Do whatever you want. Ted, maybe because he was drunk, gave a careless response. Even so, I got his word. And so, I started a part-time job. The job was as an insurance agent. I asked a former boss from the company I worked at before marriage to make me a part-time employee.
This should make things a little easier.
Even then, because Ted complained, I couldn't slack off on housework. The time I could work was limited, and I had to prepare dinner before Ted got home. I managed my time well and kept working. Then one day, I accidentally let work run late. I hurried home, but Ted had already returned. As soon as he saw me, Ted asked with a sullen face,
"Where have you been?"
"I was at my part-time job."
"Part-time job? You weren't cheating on me, were you?"
Ted stared at me intently.
"There's no way that's true."
I denied it firmly. But Ted kept looking at me with suspicious eyes. Just as I was wondering what to do, Ted reached out for my smartphone.
"Let me see. I'll check if there are any men's names." "Stop it! Shut up!"
Ted forcefully snatched my phone and began to check the contacts. And he quickly found my boss's name.
"Hey! Who's this? It's a man's name, isn't it?" "That's my boss. He's your lover, ain't he?" "All right then."
Before I could react, Ted dialed my boss.
"Stop it. You just keep quiet."
Thankfully, the misunderstanding was cleared up quickly. Of course, I apologized profusely to my boss. I urged Ted to do the same, but he simply looked away.
"It's your fault for making it look like you're doing something wrong."
That's all he kept saying. Since then, things between us just went downhill. Even when Ken became a 9th grade, nothing changed. Is this really okay to keep this relationship? I would think that, but I couldn't come up with a way to mend our relationship. Before I knew it, Ken became senior in his high school, preparing for college. Lately, things between Ted and I had completely gone cold. We hardly ever argued at home anymore. At least it wouldn't affect Ken's studies.
Things can stay like this until Ken enters the college.
That's what I thought. Then, one day, I had to go near Ted's workplace for my job.
If things were good between us, I'd invite him to lunch.
As I muttered this, I spotted Ted's car across the intersection.
"Wait, is that Ted with who?"
As I squinted, I saw 2 people laughing and chatting. The word infidelity flashed in my mind. Accusing others of infidelity while doing it yourself? What a joke. I was too stunned to say anything. I secretly took a picture of them and went to a private detective to ask them to investigate Ted.
"I probably know the answer already."
The thought crossed my mind. The idea of divorce was already set in my mind. But evidence is crucial in these matters. So, I waited for the results of the investigation. About a month later, the results arrived. They were damning. He really had the nerve. Just divorcing didn't seem enough anymore.
How should I get back at him?
On a certain day off, lost in my thoughts, Ted, who was supposed to be out, came home unexpectedly soon.
Rushing over to me, he exclaimed, "I'm sorry, but my girlfriend, who's 20 years younger, is pregnant." "What?"
I couldn't believe my ears. But there he was, a smirk on his face, declaring,
"So yeah, my girlfriend who's 20 years younger is pregnant. I prefer younger women, so I'm gonna divorce you. That's fine, right?"
Well, he certainly had the guts to confess his affair himself. However, I saw this as an opportunity. With this in mind, I decided to seize the moment.
"Go ahead and get married, but please take care of our son."
With a smile on my face, I said this, which seemed to catch Ted off guard.
What? You should take our son with you. You've always been so fond of him.
I don't want to.
Because that boy is.
I carefully chose my words. Ken, who was studying in his room, should be able to hear me. What would he think if he heard this? That was my only concern. That being said, if I don't stand up to him now, he won't understand the gravity of the situation. It's far too convenient for him to destroy our happiness and go off and find his own. I won't let that happen. I want to snatch away his happiness just like ours was taken from us. Driven by these thoughts, I decided to confront Ted with a truth that would stun him.
I hate to break it to you, but isn't Ken your son?
He's not mine.
What are you talking about? We're married, right? If we're married, then our child is our child, right?
Ted declared, looking smug. At that moment, I was at a loss for words. Is this guy an idiot? He's 4 years older than me, and he knows nothing. I was too stunned to say anything. Surprised at his lack of understanding, I exhaled deeply and hit Ted with the truth.
Ken is your child with your ex-wife, right? So what?
In other words, to me, Ken is your stepchild. To make a stepchild one's own, one must adopt them.
Huh? Adoption?
Ted furrowed his brow. Generally speaking, stepchildren remain just that, stepchildren. To act as a real parent, the only way is to adopt them legally. Without doing that, you can't have parental rights and the child won't be legally recognized as yours. Of course, socially, they may be seen as your children. But there's no legal binding. A stepparent has no legal obligations, and a stepchild has no rights to the parent's inheritance.
I didn't adopt Ken when I married you, Ted. That's why I can't take Ken with me. Wait, hold on. So, does that mean I have to take care of Ken?
That seems to be the case. Although I wouldn't say you'd be charged with parental negligence just for leaving him alone. Still, Ken is a high school student. An age where parents are obligated to raise their children. In other words, it can be said that Ted can't just abandon him. While looking stunned, Ted pleads with me.
Come on, that can't be right. What can't? I have a baby on the way. I plan to live with my newborn and my soon-to-be wife, just the three of us. That was the condition for marrying Kay.
Oh, so the woman he cheated with is named Kay.
So? That has nothing to do with me.
It's got everything to do with you.
This could all be resolved if you just take Ken. But I've told you, I can't, right? Just find a way. Please, don't ruin my happiness.
He was begging. Don't ruin his happiness? I'm shocked at his audacity. After shattering our happiness, he doesn't get to demand his own happiness. With clenched teeth, I tell Ted, no matter what you say, what can't be done can't be done. You should ask your girlfriend, Kay.
You're truly heartless. Fine, you'll regret this.
Ted slammed the table and stood up. Then, as he picked up his cell phone, he walked out of the room. Following him with my gaze, I noticed him making a call in the hallway. That's why. Yeah, that's right. So. I could hear his voice. Eventually, Ted came back and said to me, just wait. I'm bringing Kay over.
What? You're bringing her here? Of course, because you're refusing to budge, I have no other choice.
For some reason, Ted shouted angrily. It seemed like he didn't believe he was in the wrong. Well, we still have to discuss the division of property, and this might make things easier. With that thought, I quietly watched Ted leave. About an hour had passed since Ted left the house. He returned, bringing a woman with him. As I stole a glance at her, she greeted with a look of discontent.
Hi.
She didn't even attempt to meet my gaze. I can somewhat understand her feelings. Meeting the spouse of the person you're having an affair with, no matter how you think of it, cannot be a pleasant experience. Regardless, Kay turned out to be the woman who had been in Ted's car that day. I can't deny thinking, it's all because of this woman. But, thanks to this woman, I can bring Ted down to his lowest. With that thought, a smile naturally spilled onto my face. How should I start the conversation? While I was considering this, Kay spoke up first.
You're Mila, right? Don't you think your child is adorable? You've lived together for about 13 years, haven't you? Are you talking about Ken? If so, I do think he's adorable. I consider him as much my child as if he were my own. Then why are you abandoning him?
You should take him with you. I stared at Kay. Sweat was beginning to bead on her forehead. I knew it. She condemns me with her words, but she doesn't truly mean it. I recalled the results of the investigation into Ted's conduct. If the current situation described there about Kay is true, it makes sense why she would argue like this. So, I decided to shake them up. I'd love to take him with me. But, no matter how adorable he is and no matter how much I love him, legally, only Ted is Ken's parent. I can't become Ken's parent. But, yes, there's also the option of not getting a divorce. And you need to raise your child by yourself. Upon hearing this, Kay flinched. She then turned to Ted and said, I can't raise a baby on my own. Don't worry. I'll take care of our child. Besides, I'm definitely getting a divorce and I want to be with you. At that point, I interrupted. What are you talking about? It hasn't been decided whether we're getting a divorce yet. Shut up. I'm definitely getting a divorce. So, you're taking Ken with you? We're gonna discuss that later. We're getting nowhere. Kay, what do you think? I turned the conversation over to Kay. She made a pout and said, I can't raise someone else's child. Even if it's the child of the man you love? Of course not. I love Ted, not some child of Ted and another woman. Oh, I see. But isn't your argument a bit strange? Why? You don't want to raise someone else's child. That's your personal opinion, and I won't blame you for it. But, you're okay with making Ted raise another person's child, right? As soon as I said that, Kay's face turned suddenly pale. At the same time, Ted tilted his head. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the baby, Kay's baby in her belly. This child is mine. I told you that before. Sure, you did say that. But it's odd. According to what I investigated, the father of Kay's child should be another man. As soon as I broke the news, Ted turned to Kay. With her face pale, Kay looked down, and Ted stared at her. The whole scene was so ridiculous that I nearly burst into laughter. Then, Ted interrogated Kay. Is what she said true? What? I mean, about the father of the child. Don't be stupid. The father of this child is you, Ted. Kay banged on the table to argue back. But I calmly told her. That's not true. I have proof, look. Saying this, I laid out a single photo on the table. It was a picture I got as a result of a private investigation. The picture showed Kay and an unknown man talking in front of an obstetrician's office. With a private investigation, they also check if you're cheating. According to that, you have a man you're seeing. The child in your belly, it's his, isn't it? That. I mean. Kay started to stutter, unable to speak. Seeing her like this, Ted seemed to have understood everything. He collapsed in despair. That's why you should divorce me and raise the child together. Well, Ted, you'll be raising someone else's child. But Kay, you're okay with that, right? No, no way. Don't forget about Ken, okay? Wait, let's get back together, Mila. If I break up with her, you won't divorce, right? What? You're saying whatever suits you. Sorry, but I was also planning to divorce. So, this comes at the right time. And I'll claim a hefty division of property. Saying so, I slammed their cheating the evidence on the table. Spread out on the table were photos of the two of them cheating. Of course, there were also photos of Kay and the unknown man. Ted picked up one of the photos and shouted at Kay. This lying woman. It's all ruined because of you. That's my line. You should have thought. I would prefer a younger man. I thought I could just get the money and break up if I have to take the child. Suddenly, Ted and Kay started fighting amongst themselves. Fed up, I said, take your fight somewhere else, and kicked them out of the house. After that, I went to Ken's room. I gently knocked on the door, and Ken peeked out. I'm sorry. You heard the conversation, didn't you? Well, yeah. But that was all on my dad. It's not like it's your fault or anything. But I'm totally fine, really. I'll be a college student next year, and I'll make my dad pay for the move and then do whatever I want. Ken flashed a slight smile. He seemed more mature than I had thought. I was relieved to see my son's growth. However, his father, Ted, has not matured at all. No matter how many times I tried to contact him, he stopped answering my calls. Even after a few days had passed, the situation remained unchanged. The divorce negotiations wouldn't proceed like this. And he doesn't seem to be coming home either. So, troubled, I decided to go to Ted's company. But showing up suddenly might just be a nuisance. So, I contacted Ted's boss, Mr. Wilson, before heading to his company. When I arrived at the company, Mr. Wilson promptly attended to me. And he summoned Ted to his office. At the same time, he also called for Kay. With the two of them in front of me, I addressed Ted.
You know why I'm here, right? What's it?
Because you won't cooperate with the divorce discussions.
How long are you planning to ignore this?
As I spoke in a strong tone, Ted shrugged his shoulders. On the other hand, Kay had been quiet after she came here.
You look worried that your boyfriend will find out your relationship with Ted, Kay. Well, he probably already knows since you're here.
As I smirked, Kay looked downcast. Apparently, the man Kay truly loves also works in this company. So, it was only a matter of time before Kay's infidelity was exposed. Ted resisted until the very end. But after being admonished by Mr. Wilson, he finally agreed to cooperate with the divorce discussions.
Well, I'll be heading home now.
As I stood up to leave, Ted voiced his dissatisfaction.
Showing up at my workplace, you've got to be kidding. If this ruins my reputation, what are you gonna do? You're the one at fault here, not me. Besides, an affair won't get you fired.
In fact, you cannot be fired for having an affair. But if word spreads around the office, who knows what might happen? It could make his work more difficult and the office a more uncomfortable place. But that's not my problem. I just came to talk about the divorce. Whether Ted decides to quit his job or not has nothing to do with me. The same goes for Kay.
Well, do your best.
With that, I left Ted and Kay at the office. After that, I was able to get the division of property from Ted through my lawyer. However, according to the Vice Mr. Wilson, there were some problems. It happened after I left his office. Word of their affair spread like wildfire throughout the company. Naturally, Kay's boyfriend also heard about it. The two of them had a big fight, and the man broke up with her on the spot. Infuriated by her breakup, Kay demanded that Ted pay her compensation for damages. She claimed Ted abused her mentally. Of course, Ted was not going to agree to that. Eventually, it all spiraled into a messy court battle. And because the affair had become public knowledge in the company and they were now in court, both of them ended up leaving the company. Ted tried to find another job, but it was difficult because of his age. It seems like he's now working part-time at a local shop. Kay, on the other hand, is apparently pregnant and has been holed up at her parents' house. Anyway, I think they can't hold their heads high until the court ruling is made. On the other hand, things have been going really well for me. My boss even suggested that I come back as a full-time employee. Thanks to that, I'm now working hard as a full-time employee. My relationship with Ken, who is studying hard and preparing for his college, is also going great. He even told me, I have a girlfriend and I want you to meet her. Even though I'm not your mother anymore, is it okay if it's me? When I asked that, Ken said, even though Ted's my dad, I respect you more as a parent. Right now, I'm busy supporting my son with his college preparation.